Hello, hello. Okay, let's see here. Just to be certain, I'm going to see if I can hear myself just because last time I tried to live stream did not go superb, if you will. So just gonna try and hear me. Okay, okay. It seems like everything is checking out. All right, cool. What is up, everyone? It is your boy Nerdtaku, and I am joining you on this lovely Saturday, um, Easter Saturday before Sunday. Um, Super excited for this chapter. As you know, last time I went and had Larry and Sebastian, and the stream didn't go great because my computer wasn't able to handle it. But seems that it is working now for some reason, or maybe it's just able to just handle one person pretty easily. Either way, I'm currently in the market for buying a new PC, so but it is going to take a while to build. So luckily, I can still do this. And I can still record shorts and TikToks and all that good stuff. So please make sure you're following me on all platforms. Linktree down below. Um, and let's just strap in for an amazing um, One Piece chapter. I also did a collaboration with Broker and NYC Anime Nerd over on his channel. So if you have time, go check that out. We talked of theories and different stuff, and we'll probably continue to do that, maybe like once a week, maybe once every other, and it'll become hopefully a staple in your guys' watching habits. So I am ready to jump into this chapter. After last chapter, with all the rock stuff and everything, I'm ready to rock and roll. So let's get into it. Uh, okay, so if you're new here, also please make sure to like the stream and subscribe. And if you are an old head, also make sure to like the stream and comment your thoughts if you're watching it after the fact. But down below, I always do this. Right down here is my logo, but it also has the chapter so you guys can kind of follow along with where I'm at and we can enjoy this chapter together. So let's get into it. So it looks like we're starting off strong with an awesome picture of Loki, and Loki looks super cool with the pinkish purple hair. I really like that. He looks very cool. Um, Especially with the tongue out. Looks cool. Um, so then we got Oda's notes. I'm crazy for this spicy curry from Monko Ichijo. How can I describe this musical in my mouth? It's a wild thing to say. Very wild thing to say. All right, so now we get to chapter 1146, A Stir in the Silence. Okay, let's lock in. All right, and then we see over here that Alti is jumping on Yamato crying, and page one is over here. We even got oh, excuse me, what is her name? I don't know. I forget her name. Oh, Tama. My God. Holy, did I just have a stroke? Um, and then the carpenter guy. And it says Oni Child Yamato and the Holy Inari Shrine Pilgrimage, Volume 31. We owe you our lives. Please let us serve you. Very interesting. What I find so interesting about this is one, We also see Yamato and Ulti basically have the same horns, but Yamato has coloring to them. And page one also has, slightly different horns, um, but still horns. And they're not really due to their zone transformations, um, because these horns are different than, because she doesn't get horns, and neither does he in their transformations. So, very interesting. They could be part Oni as well. Um, and I mean, I would need to go back and look at Hanafuda's design to see if he has horns. Because if so, there may be another like correlation here. But anyway, let's keep going. And Colin says, "Intruder." And then Nami says, "The intruder." Jinbei says, "It must be." Usopp says, "Who the heck is that?" An enemy encounter. And it says, "The human intruders, the ones who totally outclass the castle guards. What's your deal? You're behind the kidnappings, aren't you?" And she glares and she looks down and says, "Did you just say human?" And she like grips her hat. Hmm. And Brooke's like questioning it. And it says, "We are gods." And Usopp says, "Gods? You sound like a Nell or one of those celestial dragons." Yo. And Nami says, "Why would a god go after the children of Elbaf?" And Colin says, "Yeah, they're my friends. Where are you taking them?" Colin is asking the hard hitting questions. And then he says, "Let them go." Yonko says, "A child like you should know when to hold their tongue." Hmm. I like this. Also, love the callback to Anel. What? Yo, Anel mentioned. I'm peaked. I'm peaked up. So then we cut. Hmm. Oh, excuse me. Then we get back to Ripley and Frankie, and it says, "For even for us, a clean abduction isn't feasible given the sheer size of our quarry." Oh, so Gunko's still talking while all this is happening. And Frankie blasts it with a laser, and Bonnie and Lilith are like cheering him on. And it says, "Our only option to ensure passage to the Holy Land was to have them walk themselves over here." And Nami says, "The Holy Land? You mean Marie Joie?" It's all starting to come to head. And Jinbei says, "You're celestial dragons?" And Usopp says, "No way, they're the worst. She's nothing like the ones I was picturing, though." And Brooke says, "I'm afraid this one likely holds an even higher rank, a god's knight." Yo, where is Brooke getting this information? Yo, I'm telling you, there is something that goes along with Brooke that he knows something. And she says, "Indeed." And Usopp says, "Don't tell me you're gonna force those kids into slavery." And the arrows start forming around him. And he's like, "Whoa, what the heck is this arrow thing?" Yo, this is crazy. And she said, Nami says, "We won't let you, Zeus." And Zeus appears and says, "You called Nami?" And Usopp's running and he's like, "What? Go away. It won't stop chasing me." And then she says, "Thunder Shark Tempo." Yo, that's so cool. Yo, when did she learn this? She turned Zeus into a shark and he's like all full of thunder and launched him like at her. And she said, and she creates an arrow to redirect him. And he says, "What?" And says, The world was meant to simply vanish one day. That's how it was supposed to go. And Zeus says, "Run, Nami," as he chases her. And then he like hits her and electrocutes her and says, "Yeah." And Zeus says, "I'm sorry, Nami." And Gunka's just like, eh. And then uh Nami ducked behind Brooke and he's like all charred. And he said, "It was me." And Zeus says, "It was you? Oh, thank you." And she just like ducked behind and was like, yo, she's adorable. There's an adorable panel here. Hmm. What does she mean? The world was meant to simply vanish one day. That's how it was supposed to go. Why would she say that? And then she said, however, some among the humans realized what lay in store, and they made sure the entire world would know. Mm. See, this was the burning question I feel like we have been asking, saying like, "Hey, why would the celestial dragons want everyone to die? They would have no subjects. You know, you can't rule over nobody. So like, why would you even want that?" But it seems like that is what they wanted. Usopp takes aim at her and fires, and she like realizes it, and it like looks like it hits her, and he says, and it's his like skull grass or bomb or whatever. It says, "Take that. We're not afraid of the celestial dragons, you bastards." And it says, "Yeah, that was overkill, Usopp." And he said, "It was good. It completely blew away her top half. I'm so sorry." And they're like, "Huh? What? She's regenerating. I felt bad for her, but this is creepy." And it says like crack, crack, crack. And it says, I must say it is rather unnerving to see the dead rise. And she says, once it starts, it cannot be undone. Yo, so she has the same power as the Gorosei. Confirmed. That just means that these guys are so much stronger than we had anticipated. Like, as far as like, if they can't be beat like this, then what do you do? We don't even know how to do this. We assume maybe Conqueror's coding, maybe something with hockey, but like what is there to do? You know? And then she says no one can stop it. And then an arrow forms underneath her and it's sliding towards Usopp and she says no one can stop it. And he says, "Well, I knew it. The arrow must point to her target." And Jinbei says, "Leave it to me, Usopp." And Brooke says, "An attack that telegraphs itself? How absurd." And then she says, "The countdown has started." And it says, "The world is already entangled in the opening salvo of the coming war." And then it says, "It is said the giant's allegiance will greatly shape how the conflict unfolds this time." Hmm. And Nami says, "A worldwide war? That's never going to happen." And Jinbei says, "So this plot was to take the kids as hostages and put Elbaf under your thumb. That's beyond cowardly." Mm. Talk to him, Jinbei. So we get to see the giants, and they're just destroying uh these nightmares. The ghost thing with the hat is chopped in half. This dragon just lost its head, and it looks like Broggy just killed the Draugr or whatever. And Gunko says, I am merely carrying out the mission. It may well turn out to be a fruitless endeavor. I don't particularly understand the concepts of hostages. The lives of a few children are as worthless to me as trash. And Colin says, what's wrong with you, you fiend? And then all of a sudden, the arrows wrap up Colin and he says, Gah! And it like tangles around his neck and he starts coughing. And Nami says, Colin. And then all of a sudden, Jinbei hits the 500 brick. And then uh, says, Gavote. And these arrows just start like switching their direction. And Jinbei and Brook hit each other. And Gunko says, Aloe, faded arrow. So she changed the direction of their attacks and they hit each other. And then an arrow goes towards Nami and she gets kicked right in the face and says, Nami. And Usopp says, shoots at Gunko again and she dodges and he says, damn you. And the arrow comes towards him and she knees him right in the mouth. Sheesh. And then it looks like someone's like using a transponder stale or something. It says, well, are you ready, Killingham? And it says, to tell you the truth, Elbaf's communication network is limited. It's a shame, but at least they have one of these. And it says, at least they have one of these at important points in each village. And it says, Principal Kiba. What is he doing? Oh, he's just throwing him. He says, oh my, those are quite sharp. And he just slams the principal on his head and breaks one of his tusks. And says, Principal. And Anj is beat up too and says, I can't move. And Killingham says, that's because I used sleep paralysis on you. And Killingham says, so this big old thing is a helediction snail? Never heard of it. Summers, try talking through it. And it says, you should be able to transmit nationwide. And then he said, got it. Mm. And it says, but I'm going to need a sec killing him. And it says, this one should go down soon. And he said, he's a former vice admiral, Huff. And Saul is dicked up. And he said, I thought you died on O'Hara. And he's huffing and huffing. And it says, Robin, Chopper, don't move. Stay hidden in my hair. And they're both like, Saul. And he like falls over and says, a school, a library? You should have cut the peaceful crap. You're meant to be warriors. And then he says, there was a time when your people's might shook the world. You were supposed to be our mercenaries, right, Harold? Mmm. Talk to him. And he says, the children, I'm begging you, take care of them. And he says, yeah, 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 come on, it's time for your final charge. And he says, hey, you hear that? Yee ha 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 ha. And Robin just goes, arg. And he said, King Harold, that bastard, he really messed everything up. What could the noble in quotations, king have done. Mm. Okay, okay. I need to talk about this. I'm definitely gonna have to wait for the official trans. But the way this reads to me, and maybe this is Cope. This could very well be Cope. He says there was a time when your people's might shook the world. You were supposed to be our mercenaries, right, Harold? Like meaning the deal that they made was that King Harold was going to make it so the giants were the world government's mercenaries. And then Summers is like, King Harold, that bastard, he really messed everything up. To me, and then it says, what could the noble king have done? It's in quotations. And the reason being is it seems to me like this is portraying it that King Harold was the bad guy. He made a deal with the world government to have the giants be their mercenaries. But then he went and did something and fucked it up and ended up causing his demise. And then they disagreed that this is how things should run. So, like, it seems like once King Harold was out of the picture, it didn't work that way. So, I mean, dude, this is kind of bananas. I'm pretty excited because it seems like within the next like chapter or two, probably right as we get into, because I think we'll have 1146, we'll have 1147, and then 1148 afterwards will be a break week. And when we get to there, I think that's when we start Loki's backstory. I feel like this is the perfect time to tell it. So, very interesting stuff here. Mm, damn, this was a good chapter. It did seem very short, but maybe because it was just because I was, yeah, glued to it. I was reading. I just I'm confused here. Maybe the God's Knights are tough. I don't know. Maybe the God's Knights are tough. What? I mean, if they can't be killed, they are extremely tough. But they seem. I mean, it seems like Sommers dealt with Saw like literally no diff, no diffing Saw. Killingham no diffed the principal, and Gunko is seemingly no diffing the other Straw Hats. So like if we're gonna keep it a stack, they might actually be strong. Not just like regular strong, but the fact that they have that invulnerability bullshit, like that makes them tough. It makes them hard to beat. And this is just proving that the Straw Hats are going to need something more. They're going to need to understand a lot more when it comes to this because they can't beat these guys. You know, like they can't really beat these guys like this. So there's gonna need to be something. Something's gonna have to happen. I'm almost thinking that the monster trio is gonna have to come up from the underworld after they hear Loki's backstory, and they're gonna have to each deal with one of these people. I think Luffy probably fights Gunko, and Zoro fights Killing, or Zoro fights um Sommers, and then Sanji fights Killingham. Because like these guys are starting to look tough. The only way I see them going around this though is if other people show up, like a Shanks, like a dragon. Finally, he moves. He said he was going to move when the Holy Knights got here. Now would be the perfect time. Honestly, A dragon versus Sommers would kind of go fucking tough. Like that would be hard as fuck. Um, so I'm really hoping that that's something that happens and we finally get to learn. Or even, I mean, honestly, Gabon versus Gunko right now because Gunko hemmed up, you know, Colin. That's his kid. And if he sees with his observation, he knew the gods and knights were there. If he sees that Colin's life is in danger, I think he's moving. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I think that he's moving and I think he's packing her up. But who knows? There's a lot that has to happen. In fact, we may get to discover that Gabon doesn't even know how to harm them, but figures it out during this fight and then teaches the Straw Hats how to do it. So I'm very interested in this. This is starting to shape up to be an insane moment. And just this feels like such a little teaser to what we are going to be getting in the next few chapters. Because it seems like we are hitting that all gas, no brakes moment. And, I'm a huge fan of that. I'm a huge fan of all gas, no brakes. I love when we slow down a little bit. In fact, I think we're gonna get that slowdown with Loki's backstory. But overall, I think that this is going to be one of those things where we get like a really cool moments after whoops uh after all this happens. Like it just it makes sense to me that we would slow down, then we would ramp back up. So I don't know. I'm vibing with it. I'm thinking that this is great. So I'm hoping that we can continue this trend and this can this might go crazy. So right now that the chapter is done, let's yo, what's going on, Anonymous? Um, let's go over some things. I really like the cover story that's actually mounting to something. This is very much seeming like what a lot of people have said. Um, as far as Yamato is getting her Akazaya 9 together. And she got two right off the jump, and she'll probably rally the rest of Kaido's team. Um, this whole moment with Gunko just showcasing how crazy, like her power seems like a nothing power. Um, like her power seems like it would just be, I don't know, uh, not even a good fruit, basically. But the way she showcases it makes it so crazy busted. Um, and that's just like the power of Oda. Um, and just like the way she talks here is so interesting about all of the things and the world ending and stuff like that and how it was supposed to just end but people had to open up their mouths. Super tough. Her vector power with the arrows is just insane compared to what I would have thought of. Nami using Zeus to become a Thunder Shark, super tough if it didn't just turn back to her. But that's what I'm saying. Like her utilization of this power is just it's crazy. Um, um, yeah, I truly, truly think that she's so tough. This moment where it seemed like Zeus hit Nami, but it was actually just Brooke. So funny. Love the gag, especially the thumbs up with the tongue out. So funny. Um, what do you think would be a good power up for Usopp? Honestly, I mean, he needs. I feel like he has to do something with like armament and or like enhancing his observation. Like maybe there's a way to hear the voice of all things coming or something or hear the voices similar to Gaban and be able to hurt the God's Knights with regular hits and stuff like that, because maybe there's like a core to them or something and you have to peep where it is to be able to do it. Like I hope that we get something like this. Usopp really does need to get stronger, but he also needs, like, it needs to be the way Usopp would get stronger. Not just be like, well, he gets all three hockeys, he's getting in fights, he's fist fighting people. Like, no, like that's not the way Usopp fights. So I think that there needs to be something more with his observation. We haven't had a good Usopp feat since he had his moment in Dressrosa where he used observation. Um, so definitely cool. And then Anonymous says, but you don't think they are trying to nerf Jimbei a little? Like he was a warlord of the sea. I agree. And if Jimbei lands on Gunko, maybe it does a lot. But the problem is her fruit is so tricky that it doesn't really, work like that. How did I miss this panel? I wasn't even paying attention, but there's just like a fat Luffy and a fat Loki right next to each other. That's really funny. Um, and they both like exhale, like whew. Um, but yeah. So overall, this Gunko stuff is super cool. I really like the way that she is playing it, stealing Colin, and kind of like the thing is like Jinbei and all of them really don't know how her power works. So the fact that they're getting kind of you know made to look stupid is just more of an example of the fact that she just has like a nothing devil fruit but can fucking make it badass. Anonymous says, out of all of them, I love Killingham's power the most. Yeah, Killingham's power is legit. He's crazy. I want to see him and what he has to offer. The fact that in all of this, even Nami got hit is crazy. And there's two things that I think is going to happen with Gunko. I think Sanji is going to feel that Nami got hit. That's going to be one. Two, I think that Scopper Gabon is going to hear Colin get get hemmed up and also hear Nami get hit. And he's just like Sanji. And I think he will show up here to save Colin and the Straw Hats and maybe not fight Gunko, but there's definitely a thought here that, you know, it might be something crazy here. Um, Killingham so far, just bodying the principal is super cool. And then this Somers stuff, it it really, and this is Gunko was listening to Brooke's music, but there was no personal dialogue with Brooke rallying to that. Yeah, so I think that maybe she doesn't know that that's Brooke, or maybe she just doesn't care. She's like, "Hey, it's a vibe to listen to, but I'm not, you know, really I really don't care too much about it." Um like I said, and I love this part with Somers just beating the shit out of Saw, but I really need like Robin and Chopper to step up here. Because I really think that, if we let Saul die again, I think that's foul. Um, but I will say, I love this last panel because to me, and maybe I'm like I said, maybe I'm coping, and that's very possible. I've been known to cope. Um, this whole thing with Carol saying there was a time when your people's might shook the world, i.e., Harold's era and before. And then it says, you were supposed to be our mercenaries, right, Harold? And like, meaning he made that deal for the giants to be their mercenaries. And then it says, King Harold, that bastard, he really messed everything up. And it says, what could be the noble, in quotation, king? What could the noble king have done? This to me reads as though King Harold had a deal with them, but then died and wasn't able to fulfill said deal. That's why they also said, "Are you visiting King Harold's grave to Shamrock?" Um, Now, this could mean something else, and I will say there's a possibility. He could be saying you were supposed to be our mercenaries, meaning he made a deal with someone else in Elbaf for that. And then King Harold went the pacifist route and ruined them into not being the mercenaries that they were supposed to be for the world government. That is very possible. I don't think it is, but it's possible. Um, Anonymous says, "How do you think Gabon will do against them? Because like he's the only one I think should know how to hurt him, according to me." um, well, I mean, I would think that he would know how to hurt him, but there's a possibility. I mean, who knows how long the Gods and Knights have been a thing? Um, and who knows if Roger ever came across them? And if Roger did, maybe Rayleigh, maybe Gabon, like there's a very good possibility he may know how to hurt him. So I think, honestly, I think that's how we learn how they get hurt. Our speculation is that Conqueror's coding is what is required because we saw a blast of Conquerors that made them revert into their other forms, and it even sent them back to Marijois. But that just reverted them, similar to how um, Shanks was able to revert Green Bull. We don't know that that can actually hurt them. In fact, I think uh, I would stand to reason that there's a possibility that there's something completely different that is the reason why they can't be hurt. So I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what this means for the future. Who knows? All I know is I really need to read the official when it comes out tomorrow to find out what Sommers is truly saying here. Because it could mean one of two things. It could mean I'm right, it could mean I'm wrong. I think King Harold's the bad guy. He just sparks me as that guy. Um, and then it says, didn't they come across them on God Valley? Shank's father was the God's Knight's leader at that time. So yeah, but we don't know that they fought and like sure, he was there, but we don't know that the Gods Knights had a direct conflict with the Roger Pirates. The Gods Knights could have had a direct conflict with Rocks. Um, it says they fought with slash against Shamrock. Well, Shamrock wouldn't have been there. I mean, because from what it seems, that was when Shanks was born. So if he had a twin, then that means that Shamrock and Shanks would have been born around this time, barely. So like they wouldn't have fought against him or with him. It would have been just Fagarlin. And we're not sure that Fagarlin had this same power at that time, and we don't even know if the um yeah. But we don't know that Fagarlin even was like that back then. We know he might have scarred Whitebeard. Maybe. It's always a possibility because of what he said to Shanks when he saw him. But there's also the possibility that Roger, Brox, and Fagarlin never clashed together. I mean, there's a possibility that Rox maybe clashed with Fagarlin, but we don't even know that. We know literally nothing besides for the fact that Garp and Roger teamed up to beat Rocks supposedly. And that's it. That's all we know. So I think there's going to have to be a lot of conversation and a lot of things that we learn at God Valley that fill in these blanks. So maybe Gabon knows how to stop him. Maybe he doesn't. We'll just have to wait and see on that. I would wager that he does know how to stop them, and that is how we learn how to injure the God's Knights. Either that or Dragon shows up. Um, and once Dragon shows up, maybe he shows us how to hit them. I'm not sure because um, there's a possibility here, especially because Dragon was at O'Hara after it burned down and maybe talked to Saul, that Saul and him have a connection. Saul, Robin and Dragon also have a connection because of the 2 year time skip. He could show up and fight Sommers, which I think would be fucking awesome. We would finally get to see Dragon do something, you know? Um, so yeah, that's what I think. What do you think will happen in Garp now? Um, I think he's just chilling. Literally, he's on ice. But I think that he will probably be used as a bargaining chip. Um, and he may even get picked up by Cross Guild, because they may, if they can't use him as a bargaining tool for what is it called? Blackbeard to become a world government affiliated island. If they can't use it, they'll probably cash in his bounty to get money from Crocodile and Cross Guild. So then Cross Guild might have DARP. So who knows? But overall, this chapter was really good. I liked it. It was fun. Um, I would say that this chapter is like a 7.5 out of 10. It had a lot of build to it. It had a lot of good moments, but not a ton happened. It was just, to me, it's just building. And I think that next chapter, we're probably going to get one more build chapter before we start getting some real answers, because Oda loves doing like the rule of three thing, where like coming off of a break, we have a build chapter that gives us some lore, but some drops. Then we have another build chapter. I am not flipping you guys off. Um, and then we have this peak chapter that ends on a cliffhanger, and then we have a break week. So overall, it was a good chapter to me. I really enjoyed it. Um, it's definitely not as hype as last chapter. Last chapter to me was so solid, but it's definitely a good one. So, um, but yeah, so those are my thoughts. I appreciate you for coming through, Anonymous. I appreciate anybody who's watching this after the fact. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please subscribe. If you're new here, go over to my Linktree, check out my YouTube and all that other stuff. Um, and because I'm going to be putting out content over there as well. And just appreciate you guys always coming through and showing support. Anonymous says, "What would have happened if Prime Garp was there, or like Kobe didn't fuck up? Maybe." Um, so if Prime Garp was there, he would have washed him, straight up, straight up wouldn't have washed him. Like even still, if Shiryu was doing what he did, Prime Garp catches that sword with armament hockey, takes it out of his hands and beats him to death. Like Prime Garp was that guy. He was boxing with Roger. So, but as always, thank you guys so much. I'm gonna go play some Marvel Rivals and hopefully get gold. I'm slow on that grind. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you literally next weekend because I will be back for 11:47. So have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy Easter Sunday.